All right, I'll call to order the Zionsville Plan Commission meeting of Monday, June 18th, 2018. Start by Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wayne, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Franz?
Present.
Ms. Grabanowski?
Present.
Mr. Jones? Ms. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Reinbold?
Present.
Mr. Fedor?
Present.
Mr. Lewis?
Present.
All right, we have a quorum of 6. If there's any votes tonight, which I'm assuming there will be, take at least 4 votes, one way or the other, to pass or deny. If it's a tied vote of 3-3, it'll be automatically continued. With that, in your packet, there was 2 sets of minutes, one from the April 16th, 2018 meeting. If you recall, there was some, I guess, minor gaps in the minutes. We asked people to go back and take a look and see if they could recall anything and fill those out. At this point in time, is there any comments or corrections to those minutes, additions? Being none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries 6-0. Minutes are approved. Also, there was a packet of minutes from the May 21st, 2018 meeting. Is there any comments, additions, corrections to those minutes? Being none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries 6-0. Minutes are approved. I'm going to go ahead. I know there's 2 requests for continuance on the agenda, so I'll handle those first to save them a little bit of time. 2018-17Z and 2018-DP Archview Properties, 779 Lenox Court, a petition for a zone map change to rezone 14.56 from urban business zoning district to RMF2 residential multifamily, and a petition for development plan approval of the same property.
Good evening, Plan Commission members. Tim Oakes, representing Archview Properties, the petitioner in this matter. We had requested a continuance last month in order to have adequate time to respond to comments raised in the TAC process. Our engineer was not able to get all of the work done in a timely manner to get the information back to the town. So therefore, we don't have the information necessary in terms of moving forward with the development plan. If we can't move forward with the development plan, we just as soon keep the rezoning together. The issues are intertwined, and we just think that makes sense. That's what the petitioner would like, and quite frankly, what the current owner of the property would like as well. So with that, we'd ask for a 1-month continuance, and we are relatively certain, maybe even stronger than that, that we will be ready for next month.
All right, thank you. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Parks has joined us.
Mr. Jones?
Jones. Forgive me.
Wait a minute. Telling me I look like Jay Parks walking in? You're killing me.
I have problems like that every now and then. Sorry. All right, I guess, is there any public comment on this matter? Anybody like to comment? If not, Wayne?
Staff certainly does not object to the continuance request. Technically, you would want to, if you're so inclined to consider the continuation, is to, this would be continuance of the currently open public hearing related to the rezoning and continuance to your July meeting date.
All right, is there any questions, comments from anybody on the commission? Being none, is there a motion to continue this to the July 16th meeting?
I move we continue to the July 16th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries. Continues granted. Thanks.
Thank you.
And then we have B&D Homes 2018-13 NP, petition for minor plat approval waivers from section 193.056 water facilities, section 190.050B3, general improvements from the subdivision control ordinance, and a waiver for a 10-foot multi-use path for the establishment of 3 lots in the RSF2 urban residential zoning district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street. I've represented B&D in their application for plat as well as their variances for the Board of Zoning Appeals. We come to you tonight with a Board of Zoning Appeals decision that was unfavorable to our request for variances. So right now what we're doing is revising our site plan to see if we can still submit the site plan without any variances and just normal and customary waivers to the development plan to bring it back before you. So we would ask for a 1-month continuance. At that time, we will either present it, or if it appears that we just simply cannot reconfigure the site without variances, we'll withdraw the petition at that time. So essentially, it won't go beyond your next meeting unless you seek to continue for some reason, but it won't be any continuance from our standpoint.
All right, thank you. Wayne, is there any public comment on this matter? Wayne, do you have any comments?
Staff has no objection to the continuance request.
Is there any questions from any of the commissioners? Being none, is there a motion to continue this matter?
I move that we continue petition 2018-13-MP to July 16th.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries. Continuance granted. Next on the docket is item number 2018-12Z, Hankey Development Group, Holiday Farms, through 3900 South US 421. A petition for zone map change to rezone approximately 597 acres from the rural R2 residential zoning district in the rural MRO, Michigan Road Overlay District, to a PUD planned unit development. Is the petitioner present?
Mr. President, for the record, my name is Matt Price, with an address of 485 West Sycamore Street in Zionsville, Indiana, here tonight on behalf of Hankey Development Group. Before we turn to that, though, I did also have a continuance request relative to 2018-19-PP and 2018-20-DP, which is the Pulte Homes plat, which incorporated the proposed Little League facility. Middle of last week or so, I received definitive information that Little League is not going forward with that location. And so my intent is to withdraw our BZA filing at the July 10 or prior to the July 10 meeting. I would like these two petitions to be continued. I will say on the record, my intention is to withdraw that petition as well. And I have spoken just this evening with Mr. Schifferl, who's also here tonight, and indicated that if for some reason we were not going to withdraw that petition, the two petitions that are pending, we would agree to re-notify the adjoining property owners, and we have no objection to that request.
Okay. Is there any comment from the public? Okay. All right. Wayne, do you have any comments on this?
Staff has no objection.
Is there any questions from any of the Planning Commission? All right. Being none, I'll take a motion. Or is there a motion to continue this matter to the July 16th meeting?
Sure. I move that we continue 2018-19-PP and 2018-20-DP to the July meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's second. Are all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries.
Mr. President, I abstain from the vote.
Okay. So it's 6-0.
That's subject to the renotice.
Yeah, and we'll amend, if the motioner and the second agree to the changes, it's subject to renotice.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, now on to Holiday Farms.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, for the record, Matt Price here tonight on behalf of Hankey Development Group and the Holiday Farms PUD proposal. I'm going to ask my colleague Justin Hage to give some handouts that we have this evening to explain some of the revisions that have been made since our last proposal back in May. While he's doing that, let me just introduce our development team again very quickly. Got Steve Hinkey here tonight in the second row there. Betsy Garfield sitting back there. Brad Hinkey. Doug Fleener, also with Hinkey Development Group. I have Chris Weissman from Kripe who is looking at our drainage related issues and civil related issues. Did I see Matt Brown here as well? Matt there as well with A&F for traffic related questions, and then Mike Andrioli, my co-counsel on this matter. In going back through my notes and the changes to the PUD proposal, I thought I'd highlight the 6 or 7 main revisions to the proposal. The first you may recall was we had a discussion at the last meeting about the application of Zionsville Stormwater Control Ordinance to this proposal, and we were asked to make a commitment that our drainage plans would meet or exceed the requirements of Zionsville Stormwater Control Ordinance, and we have incorporated that language verbatim into the proposed PUD. What you'll also see is a letter that's been prepared by our civil engineer, which corroborates that commitment and also explains that one feature of this project that we didn't explain in detail at our last meeting, but it's worth delving into certainly, is that over half of the nearly 600 acres is green space or open space, not impermeable surface. It's golf course. And in connection with the development of that golf course, the property will be equipped with significant detention and retention facilities that serve multiple purposes. They will serve to help satisfy the capacity requirements to assure our compliance with the Stormwater Control Ordinance, but they also provide an aesthetic benefit for the project, meaning that there's a reason to have water storage on site above and beyond just compliance with Stormwater Control Ordinance. And so what we believe will be the case and will be validated certainly as we go through, if we're approved, go through the development plan approval process, is that our capacity for storing water will be greater than that required by the Stormwater Control Ordinance. And so we feel very confident in saying that we think that's actually one of the real benefits of this proposal, as opposed to a more traditional development that may have 20% or even slightly less than 20% open space and certainly less space devoted to the storage of stormwater. So that's drainage. A second feature that we clarified in this proposal is our reference to the character exhibits. What we wanted to make clear with this round of changes is that the character exhibits are representative of what will be built on site, both in terms of architecture, materials, scaling, signage, entryways, landscaping, all the above. Those are meant to be a guiding star for when this project is reviewed, hopefully by you in subsequent meetings as this development unfolds over the next 10 to 12 years. And we've made those changes to the character exhibits themselves as far as the reference there, and to the architectural standards that are contained in the ordinance, as well as the definitions. The definitions of those character exhibits make clear what they're to represent. We've also narrowed the number of the range of permitted uses, which is you'll find in Table 4 of the PUD. And in my handout, which I've provided kind of a set of revisions that have occurred really over the last 48 business hours or so. It's been moving in real time, but they've not been huge, but there have been some additional changes. And I can highlight those for you, which is that we have eliminated as a permitted use a car wash and eliminated a funeral home or uses related to a funeral home, along with all the additional uses that we've taken out since the last draft. So to put that in some perspective for you, our original proposal, maybe not original, but the proposal in May was to limit the range of permitted uses to only those permitted under the overlay zone, except for drive-throughs under certain limited circumstances and car washes. We've maintained the drive-through component under certain limited circumstances, but we've eliminated the car wash. So we're otherwise 100% compliant with the overlay zone rules. Let me mention just a couple of technical changes that we've made. We met with the Parks Department legal counsel, Roger Burris, who's here tonight as well. and also met with the Parks Board since our last meeting. We've made a change kind of in approach to the pathway width question and to the use of pathways and whether they're going to be accessible by golf carts, which is our intention for this development as a golf course community. What we've done is committed that the perimeter pathways along 421 and Willow Road will be 12 feet in width. And then we've deferred the decision about the precise width of other pathways to the development plan process. And there's a number of reasons for that, but one of the main ones is that we think once we get into the more granular aspects of reviewing this project, that the TAC process will answer what the appropriate widths are, and they're not always going to be the same. Some of the widths I think are going to be narrower because they're going to be more just used by community members, meaning the residential community, and others will be more accessible to the public and may need to be wider, but there'll be some variation appropriate to the context in which those pathways are located and their use and function. And so we're deferring the precise measure of widths and that determination to the development plan approval process, which we understand will include the developer's experience, having done this at a couple of other locations at Bridgewater and Chatham Hills, but will also include reference to the town's strategic plan as it relates specifically to pathways. And we think through that process, we're confident that we can work through that TAC process and work through hopefully this commission and arrive at the best answers for the development proposal itself and the community's needs. I will say, and I need to emphasize this more, if we haven't brought this out, is that on a global, on a strategic level, in terms of fulfilling the strategic plan, this is a project like really none other in Zionsville's history as far as providing the east-west Turkey Foot pathway and the benefits that will flow from that, as well as the Holiday Road pathway. So I mean north-south for Turkey Foot and east-west for Holiday, sorry about that. But two significant pathway concepts really that are in the strategic plan today that can become fulfilled through this project if it is to be approved. And so we think that's really important, and I think in talking with the Parks representative that they agreed that we didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. We wanted to make sure that we deferred the more technical decisions to the appropriate time and grasped a victory, if you will, with respect to the more global goals of the strategic plan. I'll get even a little more technical here. We were asked late Friday if we would make a couple of changes with regard to Exhibit 13, which is our street and trailway standards. We were asked to add the words and/or county at the end of enumerated item number 1, which has to do with pavement sections. And we've done that at the request of Craig Parks, as opposed to Commissioner Parks. And we also, in that same vein, in item 14, there is a limitation on the length of cul-de-sacs. And so we've agreed that a cul-de-sac will not exceed 800 feet, but may be extended with an in-street cul-de-sac, meaning that you have some type of a traffic structure that's located within a street segment that could not violate the town's limitations on the maximum length of a cul-de-sac. I am not aware of another development in Zionsville that's doing that today, and it certainly would have to be something that would pass muster in the TAC review process, but we think that's a good compromise and I think acceptable to the town engineer. And I believe those were the last couple of comments from our town engineer. Lastly, I wanted to mention the changes that we made with regard to, or the approach that we've taken with regard to traffic and concerns about traffic. And we think that the best approach, in addition to following certainly the recommendations of the traffic study, with regard to the appropriate additions of signalization at the right intersection, turn lanes, other traffic controls in terms of stop signs and things that will help regulate traffic, is to commit to work with the town to promote proactive communications with NDOT. That the best approach here is to collaborate and continue to collaborate with the town. And so what we've done is we reached out to Mayor Hawk with that commitment that we made in correspondence to him, acknowledged that correspondence and indicated to us that he believed that approach made sense. I know the town, I think, has a very strong history of working with the highest officials at NDOT. I know Mayor Hawk has excellent relationships there, and we think we can continue that proactive approach. And why I think that has some real meat to it is that if approved, this proposal will take 10, 12, 15 years to be developed. And I think what that does for the town and for our leadership is that it provides some certainty as far as what's going to be built at this location for the next decade, decade and a half. And so it provides a long runway for our planners and for our professionals to be able to make those timely communications with the state and address traffic situations as they evolve. As we've done, I think, in other locations around town. And so we're committed to doing that, and it's in our best interest to do that. And we believe that the town is in accord with that approach as well. I'll wrap up, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We feel like this proposal is being led by an experienced developer with a proven track record. This isn't a first time out for Mr. Hinkie and his team. It's been successful with this model, although we believe this is going to be the very best of his portfolio. The proposal has a very positive economic benefit to the town in terms of being able to not only support the demands that it will make on the community, but it will actually help pay for demands that are already present on our community, including our school corporation. I mentioned the trailways and pathways, tremendous additional amenity. Taking the golf course out entirely, just those pathways would be a substantial leap forward for our town in fulfilling its strategic plans. The golf course certainly adds an additional attractive amenity to our larger community. And then again, I think the certainty that comes with knowing how this 600 acres will be developed in the future gives the town a leg up as far as its ability to plan and plan in a thoughtful way, I think, which is consistent with our town's approach to such matters. With that, I'll close. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We respectfully ask for a favorable recommendation, and my team members and I are ready to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this matter? If you do, please come up, state your name, address.
Christian Schmidt, 8680 East, 550 South, Zionsville. I just had a question about the timing of the golf course. What's the proposed timing of startup and completion? That's it.
So the idea is that the golf course could be started as early as this winter. This winter sounds pretty good right now after walking across the parking lot. And the idea would be that it would take really all of 2019 to build and then be available and open sometime in 2020. And obviously subject to a lot of factors as far as weather, et cetera. But we'd like to certainly get started this winter and be in a position to move forward next year.
All right, thanks. Is there any other public comment? Being none, Wayne, do you have any comment?
Thank you. From the staff's perspective, there's a lot of information that has been churned through over the last few months, starting with a TAC committee that met, I believe, back in March. Feels a little long ago, but maybe that's the correct date. With all the back and forth, staff has really worked to reduce the number of comments down to just a handful, and certainly tonight's reflection on the golf carts, the pathway widths, and the updating to the use table, which I don't think was specifically mentioned, but there's commercial standards now that specifically enumerate some items that were just found within the document overall. Staff is supportive of the petition as filed, and certainly is supportive of a favorable recommendation to the town council for their next available meeting. And certainly any other loose ends that are identified tonight, staff will certainly make note of those, and certainly will speak to each one of those as to our, what our viewpoint is, if it's something that we feel that we can address as we move towards the development plans.
All right, thank you. With that, anybody have any questions, comments from the commission?
I've got two. Mr. Price, your first request for the continuance of the Little League and the Pulte property kind of caught me off guard. I wonder if there's ever a provision that we can rescind a previous acceptance of a continuance and actually ask them to pursue it. It's fairly obvious we might have shot ourselves in both feet regarding the Little League, but there's things like, field hockey and futsal and rugby and other groups that might benefit from having land donated to them. Is there ever a process by which we can actually push the situation through and entitle Pulte to develop the south end of the property and leave the 15 or 18 acres available for future use?
That's a question of first impression for me. Although my client's not here tonight, I'd certainly be happy to take that sentiment back to them. Things were happening really rapidly last week, almost on an hourly basis, and frankly, I tried to err on the side of not making any rash decisions because, frankly, I was still receiving phone calls from neighbors offering financial support to reduce the density of home sites even as late as Wednesday, Thursday last week. And so I really let things sit purposefully because I didn't want to make a rash decision. And it would, I think to your point, would also leave open the possibility of an alternative plan, although that's certainly not been discussed by anybody up to this point.
Okay. Then my second question is regarding veterinarians' offices. So I've got several properties that have veterinarian-type services in them, and one of them is office and hospital uses. And I noticed that you had sort of previously removed the veterinarian with hospital-type use, and I think that's because of the associated kennel-type use. Is there a way that we can modify so that we can allow veterinarian hospitals at this location with what I call appropriate accessory uses, which is, it's not necessarily a kennel, but they are necessary sometimes to keep animals overnight. Secondly, they need a little bit of a yard to walk them in after surgery. So once again, it's not a kennel operation, it's not outside pens, but given the nature of what people have a habit of spending on their pets these days, being able to upgrade from just a veterinarian office to something to offer hospital services and their accessory uses might be beneficial to the project.
Some clarification on that point, being that small animals versus large animals would be beneficial as well.
Okay. We'll call them pet, not farm.
I would say small
I don't know,
versus
but
large. Some people call their small versus
it's a slippery slope right there.
Small versus large is good.
Is there a weight limit? Is that the easier way to put it?
Yeah.
It's the best term would be small versus large, I think, so.
And given that the request came from me, I would have no problem with that.
I think the point's well taken. I think you're right with lifestyles today, and I know how busy, I can't remember the name of the business there on Zionsville Road. I have a nephew that works there, though, and I know it's a very busy place, particularly around spring break time, and I think does add a convenience factor for folks.
Is there any other questions, comments?
Yes. For the record, Mr. Reinbold, for the speaker saying, I need to come back to the minutes. I think at the end of the meeting, I can clear up some of the question marks on the main minutes.
Right.
So, Mr. Price, since we're here at the Planning Commission meeting, I'd be interested to learn whether or not there's been discussions with the developers as the golf course matures. Is there any interest in, given the significance of Mr. Dye and his development and where this course sits, that there would be, have there any discussions, or has it been ruled out that in the future a possible professional golf tournament could be brought to Zionsville, semi-pro, amateur, those kind of discussions, to make sure we have the appropriate planning in place?
Yep. It's an excellent question. I don't know if, Steve, you want to, I can tell you what I believe to be the case, which is that it's going to be a championship golf course with facilities that would allow professionals or, some of the mini tours or tours to or an NCAA event, for example. It could certainly accommodate something like that. And I believe that the intention would be that the facility would be, available for that type of activity. I know Mr. Hinkie has a long association with NCAA sports, and I think he would like to certainly see that legacy continue here.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? One, I'd like to thank you guys for working with us on, the requests that we made. I think that showed good faith, and I think this property is going to turn out to be, like you said, pretty incredible piece of property for Zionsville. And the development of it's going to really take it to the next level, I think. So,
I guess to add to that is the compliance with some of the questions regarding drainage. I should remember his name, but I talked to the individual here in the town of Zionsville who oversees our stormwater and drainage. And actually the town has a very strong, stringent set of rules and regulations and ability to put in place. One of the comments that came up in conversation was just, like I said, we do have a problem at Lions Park with flooding and drainage. And, the process of kind of vetting this out, working it through, getting it back to the terms and stuff put in here, won't fix the problem, but I think if somewhere down the line there's ever concerns or commentary, we can all sort of point back to the process that we've made every attempt to make sure that new additions coming in upstream from the project aren't adding to the issue. So generally I've read my drainage and I'm pleased.
all right, is there any more questions or comments? With that, is there a motion? It's either, it's to send a favorable to the town, favorable, unfavorable. Go ahead. You know what to do.
I'm jumping right in there for
All right.
a change. I move that docket number 2018-12-B, zone map change to zone approximately 597 acres from the R2 residential zoning district and the rural MRO, Michigan Road Overlay District, to a PUD, planned unit development, receive a favorable recommendation based upon the findings in the staff report, as presented, with the recommendations being to send to the town council for adoption or
Second.
rejection.
And there's a second. All right, with that, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We
much.
appreciate it.
Christian Schmidt, 8680 East, 550 South, Zionsville. I just wanted, for the record, to suggest that when Mr. Jones is talking about a completely different topic, when we're talking about the Holiday Farms development, he brings up a completely different topic after everybody's left with interest, except for a couples here with the Pulte development. So I just think that's not proper form, and I think that should be striked from whatever record you have here.
Oh, no, I very much want it part of the record because it was kind of caught us off guard as well. It wasn't part of the meeting minutes, wasn't in the agenda, wasn't anything we were really planning to discuss. So when someone stands up and makes a statement that is kind of not planned and we've not had time to really discuss and think through, I think it's worth calling out and asking questions about it. it is an open public forum, and the idea is to actually be able to discuss items and not react to them, but act to them.
Well, I mean, this is going to be coming back to us most likely next month for some discussion, so I think there'll be plenty of opportunity for those items to be discussed. It was a little bit odd, I will say, because we were moving on, and then that topic was requested by, Mr. Price, so but I don't think it's really, long-term, I don't think it's going to have much impact on this, who knows, but again, next month, we'll deal with what comes to us. With that, let's move on to the next item. Docket number 2018-06 DP, Crown Castle USA, Inc., 4400 South, 870, is that 975 or 875? I can't see. 875. I wrote over it, sorry. Petition for development plan approval to allow for 125-foot wireless telecommunications tower and associated improvements to the SU1 Special Use Zoning District. It's my understanding that they've requested to withdraw this petition. Is that correct, Wayne?
That is correct.
Do we need to accept it, or just, is there any, nope, all right. All right, so that item's been withdrawn. On to new business at this point. Docket number 2018-24 PP, Cal Atlantic Homes of Indiana, Manchester Drive, petition for primary plat approval to establish a 22.2 acre parcel in RMF1 urban zoning district, and these are together, are they not, Wayne?
Correct.
And item number 2018-25 DP, Cal Atlantic Homes of Indiana, Manchester Drive, petition for development plan approval, provide for a 77-lot multi-family townhome development in the RMF1 urban zoning district. Is the petitioner present?
We are. Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the commission, my name is Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street here in Zionsville. I represent Cal Atlantic Homes of Indiana, essentially Lennar is the parent company. With us tonight, along with the engineering representatives and other representatives of Cal Atlantic, is Mr. Keith Lash, who's one of the principals. You may or may not be familiar with Mr. Lash. When he was with Cal Atlantic, they did the Fonterra development south on Zionsville Road, and you probably heard him present and dealt with him at that particular point in time. Essentially, this project was original project. The original Manchester Square was approved a number of years ago, and it was always intended to be two components, the north side and then the south side, with Parkway Drive dividing those two. With the economic downturn, Gunster went bankrupt, and I think I tried to point out some of those things in my narrative to you to give you some history of where we are today. Cal Atlantic has come along and is essentially attempting to pick up that development plan and move forward with it with its own project. The only distinction is the architecture on the building's a little different in terms of maybe some of the colors and some of the materials, but we've provided you with color renderings. Both are significant, unique, and I think very nice in their own right. And the other document that I gave you was a commitment sheet that we had provided to you that not only has a number of commitments, and I'll explain to you why we felt it necessary to include those, but also there's a simple site plan at the end where we superimpose the old plat that was approved, or the old development plan that was approved, with both sections, given what was built and then what we are proposing to build, so that you can superimpose those and see essentially it's the same project. Let me tell you what's a little different about this project than the other, and it's more form over substance. It's not really the substance of the project itself, number of units or anything like that. That stays true to the original commitment and plan that was approved a number of years ago. What's a little different is Lennar Cal Atlantic is seeking to plat these homes as opposed to the horizontal property scheme, the condominiums with the original Manchester Square. So these townhomes will be a platted development as opposed to the condominium association, which is essentially a development plan. Nothing else changes. The actual size of homes, the location of the homes, the street layout, everything else is done. We did that one other time. I represented, I think it's Hunter's Ridge or Hunter's Glen, out off of Michigan Road through Summer Drive there in the back. That was originally started under the horizontal property scheme, and then a subsequent developer came in and wanted to plat it. So we had to go back through the entire process and just did a platted development. Nothing changed in terms of the actual layout or anything like that, but there was a plat connected with it as opposed to as a development plan approval. Essentially, one of the things that came up in the last several days has to do with there are two private streets essentially to the east of the main drag on the original Manchester Square that comes in from 334 Oak Street. Those two private streets essentially are used to get to the back of the garages, almost like alleys, but they're utilized for access through and around those particular areas. Several members of the buildings that are already in existence immediately to the north of where we're proposing, particularly on the east side, were concerned that perhaps we were going to run a bunch of traffic up through those private streets. That was not our intent. Our streets are going to be private as well. There are some main streets that have been dedicated that will remain as such, but our streets will be privately maintained and from a maintenance standpoint and all other standpoint, subject to emergency vehicles and those types of things. So what we've, the agreement that we reached that is in, I think, paragraph 7 of the commitments has to do with the fact that we are going to go ahead and put signage at the southernmost connecting point of Parkway of those particular private drives, so that our traffic coming up to the north are being notified that those are private lanes. The access for condominium owners only, not for access to our residents. They have other access to get out, so that they don't use that as any shortcuts and this, that, and the other. So we'll work up the signage language with the HOA. Mr. Knighton is here tonight and can speak on that if he chooses, but we think that's a particularly good solution. Cal Atlantic is not only to design the signage in conjunction with working with the neighborhood, but also install it at a location that would work for the town and for the private streets themselves, to make sure that there's no sight distance or any issues connected with that with regard to people that are traversing the roads there. So from thereafter, it would be maintained. Some of the other commitments that we made are commitments that essentially follow through to both developments. Some of the commitments that we originally had with the original development plan for Manchester Square are no longer needed. They're moot because the things have already been built and they're already there. But these list of commitments, we think, are things that should carry over to this particular development as well as the original development. So we basically edited the original list of commitments, which were never recorded, but nonetheless, they were part of the development plan process back a number of years ago. Basically going to add those as either recordable commitments or I think our preference would be, since this is a plat development, literally locate all of those within the confines of the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, which will have to be filed and recorded for this development like a normal plat. So there's two ways to do it. You can either just record the commitments or embody them in the actual Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and the commitments, and verbatim, to make sure that there are numbered paragraphs in there, and those will be recorded along with the actual plat. One final matter. Normally, we would seek a Board of Zoning Appeals variance, because we're going to need variances for this project. Not the types of variances that you would normally see from the standpoint of their variances from development standards that would be peculiar to the property itself, but variances nonetheless, because we're taking a multifamily development that would be ordinarily developed in the horizontal property scheme, and then we're transferring it to a platted development. So those technical variances will have to be granted. These are perfunctory. If they're not granted, we could develop it under the horizontal property scheme under any event. But we think that as a practical matter, we would hope that you would approve this tonight, subject to those variances being granted. It doesn't change the particular development itself at all. They're more technical in nature because of the fact that we're going from condominium horizontal property scheme to a platted development, and Wayne could speak further on that. I think we've got a favorable staff report. Wayne could speak further to that as well as council can in terms of the nature of those particular variances. So be happy to answer any questions. We've also provided you with the color renderings that I think you have in your packets. But Keith is here, and we have our engineering consultant here as well if there's any technical issues. But all of the drainage and all of those kinds of things were handled long ago in terms of master plan, and we think have been embodied in most of the technical aspects of the report that Mr. DeLong has tonight, and we think we've been able to comply with all of those particular technical aspects of it without any variances or modifications. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any public comment on this matter? Being none, Wayne, you have staff report, please?
Thank you. Staff is supportive of the petitions as they are filed. The matters were first vetted in 2003, 2004 with the town, specific to some rezoning to support the overall development of Manchester Square. The first section, as Mr. Andreoli indicated, was built out. The second section did enjoy the installation of infrastructure to support future expansion of the project. That simply did not happen, and the project could move forward at any time under the horizontal property regime. With that in mind, what's proposed this evening is basically the same project, just using a different vehicle to get there, if you will. That does require future variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. The board has had history with this type of request before and has considered deviations to support zero lot line developments from former HPR properties out in Stonegate and some other places in town. Again, staff is supportive of the petitions as filed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions, comments from any of the commissioners?
So this would be, this is a separate HOA than the existing Manchester Square development, and there'd be the roads would be separately maintained by a separate entity?
That is correct. This will be a separate homeowners association as opposed to a condominium owners association. Those roads will be maintained privately. There's some continuity with regard to some of the sewer stuff that we've worked through with staff as it relates to lift stations and some other things that are in the particular set of commitments that will be embodied in the covenants. But you're absolutely correct. They have a separate HOA, and they will maintain the private streets in there. We're not asking Manchester Square Home Condominium Association to maintain our streets, nor will we maintain theirs. We'll have separate maintenance of the private streets.
And I guess my only other comment is just looking at it, and I don't know the specific rules, but has the fire department looked at it? I mean, we have these long, narrow alleys that kind of go to the back of the thing. I don't know what they say about fire access, or if they've looked at it or commented what they've said.
The fire department participated in the TAC review. There were meetings as late as last week with the fire department specific to access. I'm not aware of any concerns from the fire department.
Well then, are these buildings required to be sprinkled?
I'm sorry?
Are the buildings required to be sprinkled?
No. I don't think the Manchester Square is sprinkled either in terms of lines. There's no requirement for that to be done with regard to these particular units. In following up on, and I don't want to get you away from your question, Larry, but following up with regard to the fire department, there was some discussion about the private street aspect of it and whether we should be able to utilize a private street and how we might deal with that. And we thought the signage was the best way to prevent our people from going up on those two streets, because fire and ambulance still needs access to it. So we don't want to do anything to change the road configuration in any of that area, because that was all vetted out by fire and ambulance, and they will use that. Even if we can't use it because it's a private street, fire and ambulance can get up in there.
And my comment's more, I know that they have sort of changed the regulations regarding attached properties. Attached residential properties, once you get over 2 units, you need to sprinkle the building. So
Keith is not only
Mike.
Keith is is not only president of Cal Atlantic, but he's also an engineer. So Keith, if you want to address that, and we can have our engineering specialist address as well, it's a fair question.
For the record, Keith Lash with Lennar. There is no attached, single-family attached state building code currently does not require sprinklers. Multifamily perhaps, but not for an attached single family.
The second one I've got comes under the fact that I need a hobby. Previously, and this is interesting, so it's out of Bridgewater, they put together a similar product, a attached single-family residence where they platted the lots individually. When the economy kind of went kaput, and I wish Hankey Properties were still here to confirm it, because I did talk to some of their individuals, they actually sold those parcels off, and they were subsequently redeveloped as single-family detached homes, although they're 4 feet apart. My concern is, once again, this is a project that started how many years ago? You know, what happens the next time? And do we want to get ourselves into a situation where that potential exists? Because that's what happens once you start individually platting lots. You have, now, we probably will need to come back with some additional variances. I know Hankey Properties had to sign off on allowing these to be developed, and I've checked on them, and I don't think any of the things have sold. Maybe they have, but it's, so my one question is, if we added a commitment that if they are sold off as single-family lots, that we request a 10-foot building setback on each side.
Well, let me say, I'm not sure how we could do that, given the fact that
Somebody's doing the
this
math.
development plan is actually a development plan that, assuming you would approve it, we have to build to that development plan. I mean, we don't have the ability to come back and modify it or seek to modify it in any regard. In fact, I can tell you, and I can share with you, that there have been a lot of people that have been interested in the ground that Cal Atlantic's trying to get approval and close on over a period of time to do something other than what was originally approved. And it wasn't well received from a town standpoint, nor from a neighboring standpoint. They'd like to see something more in line with what has originally been built there in Manchester Square. So I can have Keith speak to that, but the other part of your question suggests maybe we ought to approve it tonight, and let's get on with it, and let's get this closed, and let's get them built before the economy turns bad again.
Is that a prediction?
That's very easy. Let's get going. And Cal Atlantic's had a history in town of doing exactly what they said they're going to do with regard to Von Terra. It's gone very well in the past. Usually the numbers that we put together in terms of the price of units always have been up, some as much as 40 or 50% higher than the particular price that we utilized and presented to the town. So I think we've got a big developer, somebody's committed to be able to go ahead and do these things. They've got a product for this. And you might offer any other comments.
Yeah, I think the one comment I would make is the primary plat before you is requesting 24-foot wide lots, in a sense, because that's what the townhome units are. If we were to build a single-family detached home on that, it with state building code requiring 3-foot side yards, we would have an 18-foot wide product. We don't build such an animal. So we would have to come back before you to modify our plat, and we would have that further conversation at that time about the validity to that request.
And as far as the rest of the commission members, that is what we've approved on the old mobile home park, kind of southwest of downtown. The product that is proposed for that site is the product that infilled the lots out at Bridgewater based on this type of development. So it's, hence my question.
I think it's a fair question. The problem is I don't know what assurances we can give you other than here's our plat, here's what we're seeking approval for, this and nothing else, and then kind of move forward with that. Quite frankly, personally, I think it's great that they've come along to meet the vision of what the original developer had, and with a really nice product. The concerns that have been registered over the years is really what's going to go there, and really will it dilute from the nice development that we currently have there.
And
So I don't know what kind of
my
assurances-
comments aren't really a complaint, they're more just a general concern. Is this something we need to think about, or Wayne, what's your?
Yeah, my take on it is that the market would support this type of development. We have a very limited, appetite for any particular type of product in the town of Zionsville. Certainly Manchester Square has, I think, worked pretty hard to find a partner that they wanted to bring to the table in this form, and that's what's being considered this evening. Certainly the product that's proposed in the Cove is 23, 24 units of what you just mentioned is what's in Bridgewater, which is of course a different market, a product that's been 15 years in the making to get to where they need to be. And just with the market as it is and the type of product that's available, 77 units is a pretty limited number of walk-up type, walk-up product with some density next to some urban amenities such as our trail system. And basically what you would find in this area over time will be organically created new town center with our own investments here, some additional density, some additional projects. So staff is supportive and recognizes what you're saying, but we've evaluated that as well. We typically don't get into market information, but certainly I'm prepared to speak to that this evening.
I mean, Larry, correct me, when you're asking that if we approve this, they can't move forward and say we're going to now make it. Right, you can't, so.
Item 2 of our commitments is a reference to the building elevations that we have filed.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the anticipated build-out time on this project?
We would anticipate, should we be successful with our zoning or the variances, we would develop it late this year, early into next year, start our models, probably have our first sale late 2019 and sell out, close our last home in the latter part of 2022.
Let me ask, in conjunction with Larry's question, is this going to be developed in phases, or how will you develop this?
Because of the nature of the development, we'll develop it all at one time and just get all the heavy equipment in, put the infrastructure in, get out, and then build the units.
And I wanted him to answer that because I think that goes in part to Larry's concerns and Larry's questions about how long, what's the length of this and how long is it going to take, what will happen if there is a downturn. And given these units are going to be all constructed at one time and move forward in that regard, that lessens, I think, that concern. It may not alleviate it for Ms. Jones, but it may lessen it a little bit.
All right. Is there any other questions? With that, is there a motion?
We have to have two.
Two separate motions, I take it. Is that advisable? Yes. Yes. So motion on
I'll make the motion.
2018-24 PP.
I move that docket number 2018-25-DP Development Plan petition to provide for site improvements allowing for a 77-lot multifamily townhome development in the RMF-1 Urban Zoning District be approved with the conditions noted in the staff report and based upon the findings as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay, motion carries. And then
Thank you very much.
we need one for, that's only 25. We need one for 2018-24 PP.
Keep going? All right.
Yep.
I move the docket number 2018-24-PP primary plat approval for a 77-lot subdivision at 245 Manchester Drive, estimate, be approved with the conditions noted in the staff report and the proposed findings of fact as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay, motion carries. Both approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Couple remaining items on the docket. Where can I find my sheet? Got Tom Wood. Once again, the Tom Wood commitments.
Uniquely, your colleague was to assist us potentially to attain those recorded commitments. I didn't have a chance to check in with him to see what kind of success he had, but I don't want to push this off on Mr. Bob Clutter, but certainly staff, if we do not have success that way, we will get this nailed down one way or the other for next month.
And then, last item on the docket is 2016 40 DP Hoosier Village, 100201 Zionsville Road. Wayne, do you have, bring us up to speed on that one?
Yes, I don't have the memo in front of me. It's in this pile of paper. But in a nutshell, we are, as staff, we are required to report to you. There's a test in the ordinance when the staff makes and approves minor deviations from approved development plans. And this project that's in front of you is a item that was supportable for the staff to sign off on, but we are required to report to you that action. In this particular case, a portion of the BHI Hoosier Village campus was requested to be changed from a duplex pod of units to be utilized by the owner of the property as an amenity center, and that's simply to allow this section of the campus to be improved with a trail system, a circular trail system, some athletic fields, bocce ball courts, things of that nature, and eventually some a small restroom facility. This is all internal to the campus, not for public access, so to speak. Again, just reporting this approval to you for record purposes.
All right. Does anybody have any comments on that? Being none, is there any additional business? Is there a motion to?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Mr. President. Just so we can probably do it on the record and
Okay.
save us time in the future, on going back to the minutes for May. May minutes.
Here.
Where there are question marks, and I'll call the page and starting point. On page 11, the second to last paragraph, to be identified, that would be myself as making the comment without doing the math, how many new homes was added by removing the southern commercial district. That can be attributed to me. And then on page 12 at the top, that's approximately 20 acres. That would be me. The next set of question marks, the fifth paragraph, that would be myself. And then the next one with golf cart access, that would be myself. Any restrictions on golf carts, that would be myself. Driver's license. And then the second to last paragraph raises concerns different from Bridgewater. That would be myself. And then on page 13, fourth paragraph, that ends my contribution to the record. So that would be the last paragraph of the question marks.
All right.
I mean, while we're at the next two, I think for me, the next two question marks.
Well, there's quite a
And
few
that would be
question marks.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah,
Apparently our voices sound awful alike, so.
possibly.
You sure it wasn't Jay Parks?
That's only when Commissioner Jones is not here. It's Commissioner
The shirt must make me look a little broad.
All right.
I'm pretty sure on page 15, I'm inaudible, but I asked a question about the cemetery.
Yeah, that was you.
That was me. Have to take care of dead people.
All right, is there any other corrections, comments? With that, no new business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yep.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned.
This makes up for last month.
Now I can go home.
We're out of here and it's still daylight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got a real good pass on this one, dude.
I'm a big fan of Dave's right now. I'm just that meeting doesn't finish. I looked at the
The last one was like,
9:57. I once left at 1:30 a.m.
That was a long
The minute I
one.
pulled out, the police took
We made a motion, we opened it back up and voted
I was
approved.
gonna
Told
play from
everybody
We already approved it.
that I'll have to get back to you tomorrow.
BZA that's stumbling
What are
around.
you doing? You're just stopping
I'll
every
go
car.
lie and say, yeah, I can
Who
do it.
was out at 1:30 on a Thursday, whatever it was? That's my record.
Yeah, Monroe County, when I was down there, midnight was normal. And I've gotten at the Old Town Hall, I was stopped at about 10:30, leaving, because it,
When Avon, when they were growing so fast, they would have 2 nights in a row, and they would go past midnight both nights, over Monday, Tuesday, and they would have, did 26
What we
pieces.
do all this time.
Ours is, we can't start after petition after 10 unless there's, so, last month, he actually went ahead and said.
yeah, we do have to find,
But I
actually,
mean,
You can't start after 11.
do this to catch everybody else to walk out.
Well, that's a good rule.
without exception, so.
And not because, I mean, you guys would work, but I mean, just it deters public. You know, it's fine.
Well, and, years from now, like I must have met somebody.
And there's times we've suspended it, it's just like,
Don't go.
you try to tell people, okay.
I read the minutes about the Little League case. Yeah, I saw you had to do that a couple times. Yeah, but you have to try to fail.
Oh, yeah.
What a mess. That's
Oh, I got to see goat stuff.
Great idea turned bad, right?
Was that one of their
The thing is,
Yeah, they did the dumpster, and they're, one of the things they're landscaping.
That was ridiculous project.
We didn't know they had spring.
Well, the goat
It's been
people
kind of
didn't
tough
call
out there.
us, and we always, just like
No,
you
we're supposed to
always do.
get.
I did. I'm done. I've done the daily sponsorship.
Listen, there's a new
Somewhere lost in there.
wine
See if
guy
we just haven't
in
got
charge of the project, I think.
We're just gonna drive over and get our own Bob Motors.
Oh, yeah, Neil.
Why didn't
Neil's in
they
charge of it.
Oh, geez, there you
So
go.
they claim that they
Credit
have
cards
been
from
recorded.
Yeah.
Last they just haven't.
Yeah, well, it's what you're supposed to do, is give them a self-addressed
Would have been viewed as
and
a
they'll
kind
mail
of
you your own
good
copy.
project.
And I think they've arrived on some
You
colleague's
know,
desk,
it
some
looked like it was
administrative.
We're
They're
gonna
just gonna
make you
throw in
take
some
this.
file and it's.
I
just,
in order to get
There's
this,
a lot of
they
things,
just looked that way.
and
So
I
thought,
go
oh,
off
wow,
that
I wonder why they
education
didn't
for
just
who hires.
separate it.
And
And
go
then
over this guy.
Documents that you have.
There's a
then it
lot
would
of
look like it was tied
things
together,
that I
unless of course it
played
was
for
tied together.
Well,
years,
it
but
really
then I
was,
thought maybe
but the other thing is
hard
that,
on it.
Well, you know,
And then,
you're
of
not
course,
gonna lose
Katie's
until
supposed to
because
get
of the
back
need,
new.
potential flat in there, all of a sudden
It's
that
tough.
opened up.
And the
Now
problem
they
is
just scan everything, so they make sure
No
everything.
kidding.
we have like an electronic
won't have that
filing
much
thing, it's like new
Oh, I
form that
could.
you can dump all your emails. But then sometimes,
Oh, everybody has
Search
to
me
be
up at
around,
Walmart.
like I'm horse,
but
I'm
sometimes
horse.
like even that like search
So
thing,
Walmart,
you can find
when
it,
they're
they're in
in
there,
there,
but you gotta go back to like the file that actually stored it in.
They were at the BZA guy tonight, and
Yeah,
they
sure.
that's right, so we voted
I
down, and then we
did.
got a lawsuit.
I
I mean, it costs a lot of money.
All right.
That was a lawsuit.
But you won.
I
There was
guess
one that they
so.
Right, right. You won.
And you know,
Big picture.
after they won, after Walmart won, they called us up and said, don't do anything. And the judge mandated us.
Really?
Yeah, so, I mean,
They just backed away now.
well, I mean, they wanted to talk to see if there's any way they could change it. It's because they didn't want to build that.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
So we just, but you know, when the judge mandates you, that means you're supposed to be treated as convenience, right?
Yeah, everybody was rooting for you guys though, 'cause Terry. See you, gentlemen.
See y'all later.
No.
Wayne,
Wait,
there may be something on the tape that I really don't want repeated.
Yeah, but that was, I mean, that was
It's blurry.
actually,
Oh,
I mean,
Well, did you
what's
say it
what's
during
really
the
odd about that
Oh,
is
no,
that,
just now.
oh, no, we stopped
people
recording.
think that that's really.
Yeah, no. These lights will still be on, but that's why you see you run over there.
Well, I saw you over there and Josh is going, shit.
And,
Oh, no.
and the Whitestown is.
Nope, we turned that off.
Just a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm still, yeah, we were representing Boone County, trying to help you, help Zionsville.
Very organized resistance. I mean, people are coming and seeing it.
So we're involved in the Britain.
Josh was
Britain,
not
I think
gonna be
it was
on there, he
litigation
had
about
that
the
shut
TIF.
off.
But the county was trying to work with the town. to
Oh,
try to-
I
Well, you know what
see.
happened, I lived in Fox Hollow, and at that time, you know, that was when, I mean, Zionsville was charging 2 points. assessed values.
Oh, really?
So I
All that
moved
stuff they
it
were trying to
from
annex
up
was
and
brand new.
not fit.
It's brand new construction, which at the time was.
you leave.
Oh, that's easy.
And so
Yeah, that's the first thing we've
basically
had.
annexed, we're trying to annex
Project of that
all
size
these
is came in.
subdivisions that were
Yeah,
completed.
they won
But you
one,
can't-
like some.
And then,
Well, kind
and
of.
while they were doing that,
But they actually, and I was almost going to make sense to do that, but they changed up the language
it's
regarding
like,
I still
design
haven't
just did not have.
That kind
well.
of thing.
They tightened up a lot of
Right,
that
you're
kind of
right.
stuff.
Yeah, they were,
Yeah, I just remember, we got in that
yeah, they really wanted to get through
tangentially,
this.
but I just remember thinking,
It was interesting.
how could this
I
happen?
can't think of the
Yeah,
guy's
I
name, but
remember
the stormwater
we
drain.
were
yeah,
looking from a
Yeah,
county point of
yeah.
view, but I just remember we
It was
were all
interesting talking to him,
surprised.
that we really.
And then
do
once
have
once it started,
stormwater and that kind of stuff,
you
but
could
I
see
was-
what was gonna happen.
But I think,
You know, you could take a map and just say.
You know, I
oh,
toured
boy.
the ground, or took
Yeah,
a
and
drive
that
around,
just-
took my
I
brother
mean,
around
and
the
then
area
when-
today.
I can't remember when the property
Golf course on South
caps went
Carolina.
into place, but
And he's built golf
then
courses.
at that point in
Been
time,
on
it was, you know, residential.
several stages, and he goes, you know, as
Break
much
even
wood as you
for,
have in this,
you
as
know,
you,
but
much
it's-
open field, it'd be
To
different.
lose
with
all
fields.
that, to lose all that.
He said,
was
you've
just-
got open cornfields and
Yeah.
so forth for 6 months.
I would've
of the
never
year,
thought-
water runs
I
off, it
would've
runs
just-
right back off.
well, that's, I mean, wouldn't.
Like, there
okay,
wasn't anything
courses,
there. Well, if you would have said Whitestown's gonna do this, I would have said, well, they do, they.
I thought it was the
I mean, I would've-
Yeah.
They,
It
yeah, they
can
just,
be, depending on the
But see, I
situation,
think-
like you said, because.
I don't know, I saw some
fields,
Ellsberg,
grass
I mean,
hay fields, open prairie.
sometimes the developers
then
would
you have
turn,
different scenario, but
one-
woods,
one time
when it gets a heavy rain, it just hits.
And I
ground
wondered
lines, you know,
how much
it's
that
like
went
an
on
inch or
there.
two, and then it's just gonna run right back off. That's
It's
why
kind
you
of funny
approach
because
the woods.
the
But
town
golf
councilman
course,
of Zionsville's Tom
the only thing wanting is.
Tom Schuler, and he's really, I mean, he's
Potential.
good friends with, what's the?
He said also, because we have, everything's grass, there's sand,
Backs up there.
and it sucks up water.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
I assumed that
Who's
was
leaving?
like,
yeah.
cornfield.
He's going to
Next
Phoenix.
door.
Yeah.
Wanted to keep a certain amount of water in. You didn't
Well,
want pooling water.
They did.
But you're saying they drain a lot better than
And then they had a purpose.
Well, I
land
mean, if you
divided
get,
there.
like,
Me knows.
in December, if we get a
Yeah, you
3-inch
get up there
rain,
and it's like you
that
got
water,
the
that
whole
rain's gonna run
town.
right off, while the ground's
You
frozen.
come down here and it's like,
It's just gonna, I mean, it's gonna be that way everywhere.
I know.
But in like cornfields.
Well, I still, there's
you're
no
gonna
place in
have-
Indiana like
yeah, everyone,
Zionsville.
there's
There's
steel
just-
tiles underneath most
my
of
brother
these,
lived
so
here for a
they're
long time, and I
draining
just
that
remember
water off as
thinking
opposed to
that
send through the-
people
to
were gonna
the
try to be
water
Zionsville
gate.
for a long time.
But
you
on
know,
certain,
just
on
no
cornfields,
place
like with those
no.
grades that there
There
are.
are
in
places
these
out
fields,
east like
there's no
that,
tile
but
in
they're
it,
just-
so
it's
it's
just
naturally
usually-
runoff on
You
its own.
can, you can protect that.
You get a lot more
village
runoff
area
in
and let
cornfields.
everything else
Bean
kind
fields
of
and you
go
do
around it. I
that.
mean, that's what you gotta try to do. You still have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if it's highly erodible ground and they're tilling it improperly, which happens all the
All
time.
the time.
Uh,
I mean,
You know, highly erodible ground should not be tilled, period, that's a violation, I think.
This is different.
You should,
Right,
you
really,
Like, you know,
right,
some of the stuff you would.
get in a lot of trouble for that. If they're
Yeah,
tilling
that's the part
highly
that's never
erodible
really
ground.
developed, and that's what I
That's
thought,
because when they do get big rain, it just
like,
washes all
Anson
that down, and
provided
there's
was
storm
this
issues and so forth.
huge commercial
I
intersection with
I actually
65
had
that,
a little bit of a
you
concern.
know, could have become,
And he
like,
brought it up
I
to
mean,
me, he said,
I knew the guys
"My
who did
station
the
would be-
fashion mall
Are they gonna have
way
any
back
outflow
when,
on
and,
that
and
porch
when
without
there
full
was
run
nothing
creeks
out
or
there.
something?
Yeah.
I thought they were crazy.
Because they're water
Of
and
course,
golf,
they were
those
crazy
golf
like
courses
Fox,
are
but-
watered.
And
Yeah,
I
just
I
a
was
different
asked that at one point,
skate
but I-
shop.
so like,
That's what they offered.
Had
my
a guy I
experience
worked
golf
with, his
courses
dad
is
lived
built
in
Mel Sinai, I think,
well,
and all the ponds
somewhere
are
in the
all interlinked to the pump
north
house. And they actually have a city
corner
park.
inside
So
465.
after it was built, you know, all the
And
neighbors are always claiming my
his
well
son,
twin
when he was
drive,
like
but the
12
sign
years
was a
old,
pump, and we're like,
was saying,
no.
This is like
All the lakes,
mid-70s.
this pump house, so all the
Dad,
water
we should be
falls,
moving
we
to
keep,
Carmel.
and then see this
Almost
12-inch
live in
line coming
Carmel.
up out of here,
That's right.
12-inch back.
That's right. I was in
There's
Houston on
water-
business
water
once, and
company. It
met
fills
this lady
ponds
who
and everything
graduated
goes.
from Carmel in
There's no wells,
1968.
there's no pumps.
And she was telling me about what it was like
All
then, and
used to
I just
recycle
couldn't
on site,
picture
so.
how I was,
And most golf
you
courses
know,
are held to
in
pretty
the
high
eighties, by the time,
standards.
you know,
Yeah.
everybody was aware, it really changed, but
It's like,
she was
it's a
telling her
course,
class was
just
like
took
86
over a new
people
course of the same
in
age.
class, I mean, just really, just changed
But he has to
everybody.
deal with
She
our
talked about thought how Meridian Street went and stopped.
South Carolina Fish and
You
Wildlife.
just stop,
He's got
you know,
6 or
so-
7 because there's a creek.
But even,
down there
because I remember
smack dab to the
Carmel
golf
Main
course.
Street, I mean, I've lived in Indy
Bridges,
since
all his bridges.
88.
The previous
And I remember
management
Carmel Main Street, like
didn't
around
think
90
well far
was just.
enough ahead, built all the bridges hold 5 tons.
Well, yeah.
That's
I
all
mean,
golf
anything
course,
down there.
no problem. It doesn't hold the semi-loads of sand that he has to bring into the course to revitalize it.
You're in debt, but, you know.
Yeah, I go to his bosses the other
Oh,
day.
yeah, they've changed that whole area
$1 million
quite a bit. Yeah, they have spent a lot of money, but
Yeah, we're gonna hold
We
off
did a
on
good job
these, we'll
today.
figure it out
Yeah.
somehow.
I mean, my job easy.
I have no
you
bridges.
just keep it rolling, which I appreciate, because I sit through a lot of meetings where that doesn't
I
happen.
just got caught, the whole thing with the variance, a mass question, it's kind of like, yeah, it's odd, but okay.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let it go.
All right, we'll see you later.
Thanks, David. 2 months is a 78 lot, just traditional.
Do we need to sign?
Please, yes. And we did, I had plenty of conversations with Matt about different strategery on how to do that.
See you, gentlemen. Thank you.
And you'll have the thing for Hankey done sometime this week?
Yeah, we got that certification.
Okay, I'll stop it. Let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
See you later.
No, because that was the crux of the issue, and I couldn't really get through to that, because he changed from, here, out of an abundance of caution, to, I don't need this variance, and Wayne told me I didn't need it. Wayne say on the record, I don't need it. And then we never got there because the variance was obviously continued, and now we're here with him basically telling us everything's going to be withdrawn. And what I personally believe is going to happen is they already have the rezoning on file to rezone the SU7 back to RSF2. That's the state bank of wisdom. Pulte would then swoop in, take pages 17 through 21 out of their development plan sheets that are in, and say, give me my 78 lot subdivision. And oh, by the way, screw this half lot business. I'm shoving every rinky dink lot they're supposed to have up against that horse farm, because people love to look at those horses, and I'm putting big lots on the outside, and you guys can go pound sand. And oh, by the way, approve me, because I'm not asking for it. So I thought what you said was dead on, spot on, and of course somebody's going to react to it. But I'm sorry, Matt asked for continuance out of turn. The Plan Commission has every right to say, hold on a second, we're doing dual testimony here.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to riddle me this.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Now, between you and I, Dennis is up here whispering to me that it will be back.
What will be that?
No need.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. They want to find a new home. That new home could be Wolf Run. But they would put it up, because Wolf Run is putting itself in contention to host the league.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
there was a part of me was almost thinking to say, this